Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, and listeners, and anybody again. As always, if it's the first time, thank you very much for joining us. Here we are again, another fresh Saturday. Beautiful weather here in the UK. I hope it's the same where you are, Stephen, and welcome again, my friend. How are you?
Thank you, Chris. Good morning. I see the temperature in London topped Malaysia yesterday. It was 32 degrees here yesterday, as it generally is every day of the year. London topped 38. So I'd rather be here than there.
Yeah. No, it was lovely day. Bit tough to sleep last night, but good.
Oh, we know you can sleep quite well, Chris, in the best of times, at the worst of times.
Yes. It doesn't take me much, my friend. Anywhere, anytime.
I know people have been laughing at that statement already.
Always catching up. Yep. Thank you. Now, firstly, Kath, Gregory, Pontus, thanks for your comments about the loud shirts. I've toned it down a little bit this week, and as you can see, your friend and colleague Stephen has gone for a more traditional sporty look with his Glen Eagles t-shirt. So we took your advice. Thank you very much, Kath. Now, Stephen, continuing, if we can, with planned positives.
Planned positives. In a week of pretty robust negative news, there aren't many positives out there, Chris. But look, the couple that I have managed to find, emanating from our friend and regular named airline, which is Wizz Air. I think it was interesting this week. The Farnborough International Air Show was due to be held this week, and actually the Farnborough Air Show was held this week, and I thought that was rather peculiar. But I attended a couple of the seminary sessions, and one of the talks that was on, obviously it's all virtual, was with Joseph Varady, the CEO of Wizz Air, our good friends in Budapest, and I think Joseph's view continues to be strengthened by the recovery of Wizz Air, who are now around about 77% of the 2019 traffic levels now in July. So that's a pretty strong recovery we've seen there. That compares kind of very favourably to the European average, where Eurocontrol are reporting for the week of, I think the first week in July is around 37% of EU airlines 37% of 2019 capacity has been recovered. So Wizz Air clearly stonking ahead there. I think other positive news also that Joseph was touched on was his feeling for, and we spoke about this, Chris, the opportunity for low-cost carriers now.
Yeah.
So, I think going forward, the full-service carriers or the premium brands, the hub carriers will continue to be challenged. But for those looking for reliable, consistent, service and a strong network, I think look no further than Wizz Air, who have done that admirably in Europe and are now replicating that in Hungary, in Abu Dhabi. And Joseph's point was that the European operation had grown to 100 aircraft in 15 years, and he saw no reason that the new operation, the new AOC in Abu Dhabi, couldn't grow to the same kind of numbers in 15 years. So I think biting at the heels, therefore, directly of Euro Paymaster and friends at Etihad, sadly. But the reality is that this stalking horse is no longer stalking. It's real. It's it is challenging. It is challenging the traditional carriers, and they will have to change. So Etihad and Emirates will be further challenged, I suspect, by the arrival of Wizz Air in Abu Dhabi.
So firstly, well done Wizz Air, but we have to make it clear we are not sponsored by Wizz Air. They are just somebody who's frequently coming up with either innovation or positive news, and fair play. Yeah. So Joseph, until we receive a T-shirt and a baseball cap, we can't officially be your sponsors. However, well done. That's good news. And I think, Steve, what you're saying now, complacency, and whereby people were a little bit more comfortable prior to this, they're having to look over their shoulders now, because anybody who's got any way about them at all is looking at how they can now start to capitalise on any good news and any opportunities. Now, you also mentioned, Steve, just as we were warming up, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen...
Well, we don't give the game away, Chris. We don't warm up.
No, what I'm saying is we do a few star jumps, we do little stretches,
and we have on for that very reason.
And we have a little gargle. Now, you mentioned about the Chinese and all you can fly.
I did. I think this is look, I mean, you know, there's a lot of levers being pulled by airlines, as we spoke again previously, you know, to try to re-encourage travel, whether it's around, you know, confidence restoration and health measures, or it's in supporting testing capability with airports. You know, it's about reassuring the customer to get them back on board. Pardon the pun. Pun fully intended, of course. I think what the Chinese carriers have done, which is not unique. There are other carriers that have done some similar things here in Malaysia, where I am. AirAsia did something similar a while ago, but that was for different reasons. That was because they were squeezed with liquidity already before the crisis, certainly in AirAsia X. What the Chinese carriers have done, a couple of the majors, the one announced this week was China Southern, announcing a kind of $500 US all you can fly, all-inclusive pass for Chinese domestic travel between now and I think it was beginning of the year, around January time. So that's pretty sensational when you think about the value that presents to the customer. China, we've already seen some recovery and some green shoots where they're earlier than the rest of the world, because China obviously started earlier than the rest of the world did. The problem is we're now seeing some resurgence again in China, and so I suspect that we'll see more of this in the North Asian markets to try and re-stimulate that growth. But fair play to the Chinese. They're doing the same they can, as well as everybody else, is to re-energize this industry.
Yeah, and again, it's this consumer confidence, and now, I mean, everybody's aware now of more restrictive lockdowns, spikes, and we've always said it, and I know you keep reminding everybody and us, we're not experts from the medical perspective, but the second wave and spikes are going to be something that's going to be with us for some time, and especially until there's a vaccine.
Well, I think we're going to have to accept that we live with this. This continual, hammer and claw that we've spoken about before, the hammer coming down, closing up the economy, closing up business, closing up commerce, closing up travel, and then sort of the claw slowly dragging it back up again as we start to see some resurgence because of dissipation of the transmission of the virus.
Yeah.
The reality is, Chris, that we can't continually close parts of an economy that were previous to COVID sound and solid and secure. Yeah. For the most part, the economy in the majority of the Western world certainly, and also here in the East, was doing pretty robustly. Good employment figures, good GDP, good growth, good inward investment. We were seeing pretty strong signs of an economy. So, the economy prior to COVID generally was, in my layman's view, pretty sound. What we've done is we've artificially, suppressed that now, clattered it down. Not just suppressed, we've, threw a bloody great rock at it and smashed it to pieces. I don't think we can continually go in and out of lockdowns. This is going to be, it's going to be the death of COVID. Won't be the death of people. It'll be the lack of economic, success and do good that kills people businesses. Suppresses investment into other, sides of the economy. So that's my worry. So what does one now do? I think what we've actually now got to do is take the bull by the horns, get some decent testing in place, some decent quick testing, instant testing. However these mad scientists and boffins in the laboratories or the universities can support industry, and not just industry, but globally, because to keep lockdown is just not realistic. Yeah. I think I saw an article in the Times yesterday, Times of London, suggesting now that this sort of discussion previously about herd immunity, which was couldn't ever possibly discuss that. That was not to be discussed. It was you were sort of persona non grata for discussing such things. Merit of that maybe coming back into conversation again. Maybe it is time to start building immunity. I don't know. I'm not speaking from a point of authority. Simply saying that we can't go on as we are going on now today. Yeah,
that's a tough one. What I would just like to say is that this show loves an acronym, because I do. And when Stephen was referring about mad scientists, MAD actually stands for making a difference. So it's a very, very positive term that was given there. So well done again, Steve, for bringing that in. But I agree with you. And now, if you look at Heathrow and everywhere else now, they're talking about having a proactive testing regime. Yeah. All around the world now, they're doing it. Now, Boris and the government here, they've always had these little signs, and all the different phases of save lives, help the NHS, etc. I think what we all globally need to have now is chase it, clean it, and kill it. And I agree with you that we've got to be proactive together. We've got to go out, we've got to attack it, we've got to clean it, and we've got to kill it. And that's the only way that it's gonna happen. Now, to do that with all the brains and all the different systems of testing, surely, be to God, they can come up with something that's going to be effectively agreed by everybody and use the best technology instead of all trying to do different things again and compare it. I don't understand that, Steve.
Well, I think it's he who shouts loudest is heard the most always, right? So the people that are out there shouting about their testing capability and the science capability are the ones that expect to come up with the solutions, but actually are far from it. I think you look at some of the decent testing kit that's out there now that's being reviewed and tested and so on is actually from nations like Japan and Korea, Chris, that don't shout about much. They're quiet achievers, and they don't have to shout because actually their capability and competence speaks for itself. So I think a lot of these people, shouting early on that we've got result, we've got a test that will work. Well, it all went by the wayside. So much rather, do this properly and over a sustained period, demonstrate, its sort of sustainable value and contribution to the control and the transmission of this disease before you go out and start to market it and shout about it to everybody. So I think a lot of talk. I said Heathrow Airport this week. Other airlines, airports, all looking for the same capability. So you're absolutely right. It needs a unified approach. But at the same time, we've got regulators. Sorry, not regulators. We've got lobby groups, and trade groups like IATA, ACI, so on and so forth, that have sort of struggled to have the teeth, if you like, in enforcing. I saw a report yesterday saying, I think it was an Australian airline, strongly encouraging passengers to wear masks.
Yeah, strongly encouraging.
You don't strongly encourage, you bloody tell them, you must wear a mask. It's mandatory. It's not encourageable. It's incorrigible not to wear a mask.
I agree with you. I agree. And again, we've been speaking about, people using terms of right sizing and short sizing and downsizing. But at the end of the day, excuse me, too much gargling earlier on. Practical sizing is what we're talking about. And some of the news, and again, it keeps popping up, a third of pilots losing their jobs, etc. And it's not just, folks on pilots, the whole industry is at stake here. But if the pilots who are the people who are, shall we say, driving the bus, and if that gets reduced and the buses are reduced, you're going to get less passengers on the buses and less people service them. So if this is the indication now, and it's still getting worse, and then you look at the information from IATA, about how, about no recovery now, they've extended it till 2024, and looking at the levels that are expected, it's a very, very pessimistic recovery outlook that's being spoken about. So one of the questions this week, Steve, is related now, and you've mentioned ACI, you've mentioned IATA, and one of the questions is from Juliana. It's representative bodies. Are they having to downsize also? And if so, is this not counterproductive? So what Juliana was talking about is if representative bodies are downsizing because they represent the industry and they're part of it, then the actual focus that they should be putting on with governments, with air corridors, with landing rights, etc., there's not going to be so much activity going on. So what's your take on that, Steve?
Well, I think, look, Juliana is absolutely right. There is a squeeze on funding. That squeeze on funding, Chris, extends to these groups that you referenced. I think the challenge specifically is, look, we've got airlines that have got finite cash, and they've got very sensitive choices to make about where they invest their money. So I suspect that they're the ones funding IATA. I suspect the airports are funding the likes of ACI. We've also got obviously things like BAR, the Board of Airline Representatives across the world, that do a lot of work in this area. And you've got different versions of that around the world, ACAP, the Association of Philippines Airlines, and so on. So there's different bodies and different groups. I have to say, as a whole, Chris, I don't think the groups have been as successful as they would like to have been in pushing for uniformity, in pushing for equalising, and getting a uniform sort of platform across the board. Whether that's in testing or it's in waiver of charges or it's in air traffic rights and protection of slots and so on. I think there's still some work to do. I think it took them long enough to get their act together before they were able to publish the IATA guidelines, which I think came out, was it June or end of June, beginning of July? Well, we were already about 4 months into that stage, and many of the airlines had already probably given up hope with the likes of IATA, and therefore started to do their own things. Can I blame them? No. So I'm kind of with the airlines here, and sort of thinking, actually, where do I get best bang for my buck? Is it investing in local lobbyists in the federal, to support our cases with the federal governments in the US and Australia, or support the UK parliamentary approach, or is it pumping more money at a time into IATA or the likes of ACI when I'm not quite sure on the return on my investment? I would be suspect that airlines and airports and ground handlers don't generally agree at the best of times, Chris. It's very difficult to bring 180 or 200 plus airlines in IATA together and get them to agree to a solution. So maybe the alliances, One World Star and Sky, have got a better kind of a approach, because the airlines generally are committed to that. And I see the place of alliances taking more importance and precedence going forward. When it comes to the commercial regeneration of airline business, than I would do with the IATA or the likes.
Okay, very good. Well returned there. And also, you mentioned there about alliances, and it also stands for anybody that's now looking at cooperatives whereby people can partner with like-minded organisations within the industry and get the benefits, whether it's central procurement, whether it's to do with policies, etc. I think there's going to be a lot more interest in programs like that as well moving forward. Now, Steve, business travel. So obviously that's been hit, and we've done a lot just recently with private aviation, which is really having a surge. There's an awful lot there. And again, one of the points that keeps being brought across is these touch points within the traditional carrier experience and private aviation, from 700 down to like 30 to 50, which is a phenomenal health statistic if people have got that as their driver. So there's a big difference there. But now, whilst business travel is going to be on the back foot for several years, and now the work from home, and like both of us now, we've been involved in lots of Zoom meetings and various team meetings and exercises over this particular medium. It is working, and people are starting to realise how it's working. So this is also now going to have a knock-on effect on offices, office space, commercial properties, where people live. It's a big ripple effect that's still going out, and it hasn't hit the shore yet.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I fear for some of the large property real estate developers and the property owners and managers, because I suspect very much that that their buildings will be like ghost towns for quite some time to come. The aspect, of course, the question, of course, now is, how much work can one do from home? How constructive is one working from home? What meetings and what expenses and travel could companies mitigate by working from home or working remotely? Home could be anywhere, it could be Starbucks or whatever you so choose. I think we've proven the old misnomer that actually working from home used to, and I was one of the skeptics. I never really liked working from home very much. I preferred to be in the office. Not a lot. My colleagues sometimes didn't prefer me to be in the office. I was quite loud and energetic, and so at 8 o'clock in the morning when I rocked up, it was
yes, I've experienced that.
To the piece, but But look, I personally, I prefer being in company of others, and I'm a bit of an extrovert, so that's my personal style. I have found it relatively okay, during this period. Sorry, my dog just decided to make an appearance. I think, look, the ripple is real. It will have lasting effects. You think about all those people going into town or going to offices every day, Chris, on train, season, lunch at Pret a Manger, or pick up the coffee at Costa, or whatever the local equivalent is in your region. Lunch at Isle Bike,
Yes.
All of that, Chris, will will sort of go by the wayside. So I think there is a lot of question about what the go forward position looks like.
Yeah, I agree.
At the same time, when governments are pushing people back to work, which is the right thing to do in my personal view, but they're pushing them back to work not just simply to be in the office, but also to be spending in the local economy as well.
Yeah. Which is what everybody needs to get themselves through to middle of next year. Now, a little bit of good news, and especially with regards to consumer confidence, because insurance is vital for all travellers to have peace of mind and confidence when they're travelling, and especially now with some of the last minute changes that have happened. But WTTC, so the World Travel and Tourism Council, has unveiled new insurance guidelines now in order to rebuild this global confidence for consumers. So I think that's a good sign, because people were very worried about shouldn't they, and if they're encouraged to do so, and then suddenly certain rules and guidelines change, they're left without any recourse. And what you're saying earlier about carriers who don't refund and don't do things quickly for the public has a long memory. And if you treat people correctly at the beginning and show them how you're supporting them, they won't come back to you when times start to swing good again.
I agree entirely, and we've touched this many a time, and the words that I've used, which were, you live and die by your actions. Yeah. And the UK Civil Aviation Authority this week published their report on airlines and their performance when it came to passenger refunds. The likes of Etihad came out very badly. They're sort of bottom of the list, refusing to refund customers. Average days of upwards of 150 days or 120 days, whatever. Also at the bottom of that list, or near the bottom, was Emirates, Turkish Airlines, Malaysia Airlines. All faring very badly. I have to say, whilst Ryanair and EasyJet had a bad start, they've moved up the ladder. Generally post a refund within 30 days. Wizz Air does very well, but the standout performer was Jet2.
Yeah.
Jet2, an airline that generally serves leisure markets from the north of England, Manchester, Bradford, Birmingham, Newcastle, etc., and has done that very successfully. For the last dozen years or so since they've been Jet2. Before that, I think they were Channel Express. Remember, Chris?
Yes.
It came up with a cargo airline. So some surprising things, and I've already heard people say they've been highly complimentary of the likes of Jet2. And there's Wizz Air getting a mention again. So look, absolutely, but customers will remember this. They've got long memories when it comes to spending money from their pocket, and because discretionary spend now is so challenged, they'll spend wisely. I would say that the overall impact of tourism. I was reading the World Tourism Organization report this week. $320 billion, Chris, in 5 months.
Yeah.
I mean, that number is just staggering. I mean, you think about all the other. We speak mostly about the jobs in relation to aviation, aviation services, airlines. But you think about all the other impacts on hotels, restaurants, drivers, Grab drivers, etc. It's massive.
Yeah. It is. It's incredible. And like you said, the numbers are just, it's just you can't fathom. It's incredible.
No.
Incredible. Right. Another thing, Steve, which in one sense is encouraging, and now it's a little bit worrying. So everybody now focusing on testing, etc., and controlling, but everybody's got one eye on the future with the vaccine arrival. And now there's been concern that even when the vaccine comes, that the world supply chain may not be ready and may not be able to bring it to everybody's doorstep. So one of the people that we know well, Neel Shah okay, who's the global head of carrier relationships with a freight forwarder based in San Francisco, Flexport, he actually said very openly, we're not prepared. And vaccine supply chains are, they're exponentially more complex than basic PPE supply chain. So, he's very, very concerned. And then another well-known character, especially in food chain and pharma, is Julian Sutch, the head of Emirates Sky Cargo's pharma division. And he's given a very interesting statistic that a 777 freighter can carry 1 million individual doses of vaccine. So that means that globally, the airlift double dose regimes to protect half the world's population would require the space in about 8,000 cargo aircraft. So there's a huge challenge. So even when it comes out now, the industry that's had to come up with so many solutions should actually be looking at this now very, very early in hand in glove with the drug makers, all the pharma distribution organizations and all the experts. And the earlier they do it, the better.
I'm staggered that people think that we can actually successfully deliver a global vaccine. Yeah, we haven't done so for polio. We haven't done so for typhoid. What gives us the incredulity to think that we could deliver a global vaccine to 8 billion people?
I think, Stephen, it's a little bit like anything. When you're looking out of your front door and there's no traffic on the roads, you look out your back door and the garden's all cut lovely. You don't focus and worry about anybody else, and that's just human nature.
And how selfish the human race is.
Sorry?
When we can't even get people to wear masks to control the virus, yet they'll expect a vaccine from their government to be funded by their taxpayer. I think we've got a disconnect here. So you want your taxpayers to fund a vaccine for you and your family, but you're an anti-masker. You might even be generally an anti-vaxxer.
Stephen, I couldn't agree more. I mean, from my
but it's taxpayers. The taxpayer doesn't have an unlimited pot of cash, and I think that we need to protect those that are vulnerable, protect those that are highest at risk before we start talking about global distribution of vaccines to people like my age that actually wouldn't really do to it. I get the point about cross transmission to others, but that's where we've got to put the vulnerable categories in good care.
100%, and we've got to move. I keep saying we've got to move from crisis to care, and once we learn what challenges we've got with this crisis, it's so important then, as you say, to focus on the vulnerable and the people that need it first, the ones who should be protected. Yeah. So what I'm saying is everybody now has got to start coming together and organising what they would do as and when and how it will be done and what people have to do if they're not on that first, second or third level of vaccine.
Yeah.
Okay, I take it the dog's not chewing your cables.
I'm sorry, the dog is chewing the iPhone charger cable, which could be a slight problem.
Yeah. Well, that's good that he's already focusing on technology, so that's a good sign. not your feet. Now, Steve, another few questions. Right, there's another one here which we've covered vaccine. So now supply chain capability is questioned. Surely common action play is required, which we've covered that. That was from Denzel. And for anybody who watches Only Fools and Horses, it wasn't the original Denzel.
All right,
so thank you for that, Denzel. But 100%, you're right, and you've heard it. We're both endorsing that those that are more susceptible and under more pressures than normal, they should be treated first, and we have to have a conscience. So again, the mantra from crisis to care. Everybody's got to start caring more. Your point, Stephen, about the wearing masks and having disciplined instructions. Everybody who's a leader in a government now, stop being wishy-washy. Tell people what they must do and tell them what will happen if they don't do it. It's simple.
Private sector as well, because there's nothing stopping an airline or an airport saying you must wear a mask to enter my building or to enter my aircraft.
Yep, 100%.
There's nothing here about human rights being diminished. This is just plain common sense. But as we know, common sense
is not common.
Very common.
Exactly. Now, there's a little question here that was pitched directly to me from Jessica, and it's sorry, not from Jessica, from Barry, but I want to bring in Jessica from American Airlines because Jessica is a lady now who's taken on the lead role in American Airlines on cargo, and she's a very, very impressive business person who's focused on change and has done a great job already and has got great ideas how to move forward. But the question is about, you met, and this was directly me, about, I mentioned about keeping people involved when they have to lose the jobs they love and the industry that they've been in for so long. Now, one of the things that I've done is I've sent a communication to some representative bodies just with a suggestion that when people are addressing this practical right sizing, they're talking about the family and, you know, the group of people and what a great industry this has been, and that for the success of the industry, it's going to have to be without some of the people that were there delivering and building and, you know, bringing it to where it was, which is sad. So one of the ideas I had was that if all organisations and representative bodies were able to prepare and produce series of regular communications, regular updates, regular training modules, so that anybody that was displaced through no fault of their own, they could keep in touch with the industry they love, still see what some of the people who are leading the industry are doing, and feel part of it, so that, please God, whether it's 2 years or 3 years' time, they would be the first ones that would be able to come back, and they'd also still be in touch and understand what was happening. So whether it was from licensing or awareness or seeing results of audits or where the biggest problems were, so that they were aware and familiar. And if they do get the chance to come back, they'd be welcomed back because they've invested a lot in the industry, and the industry now should try and keep hold of them. So that was the ideas that I was putting across. Now, I've sent that formally. I do hope it gets a little bit of recognition, or at least a response. And as I said, we had the pleasure of speaking with Jessica earlier in the week, and you know, she is somebody who's appreciative of the need for change, the understanding that it does have a hard impact on some, but she never took her mind or her focus off of the fact that people come first. So Barry, appreciated that, and Jessica, thanks for that additional bit of motivation on the podcast, and it's been sent off now, so I hope it'll come back in some positive manner. Now, Steve, you mentioned again about collaboration, and I've got another question here, ironically from the namesake of your own, which is Stephen, but spelled differently, and I know how focused you are on spelling it correctly. Still no collaboration between airports and handling organisations and carriers. Why can't that triangle start to work better together?
Chris, we discuss this point almost every week, I think. Look, I think it comes down to a number of things. One is generally they are opposed. They're coming at this from different sides of the debate historically. I mean, pre-COVID. Airports see themselves as landlords, commercial landlords who charge ground handlers either tenancies or royalties or concessions. Ground handlers see themselves as kind of representing the airline, but don't have the teeth in the same way or the power that the airline does. And the airlines see themselves as kind of the be all and end all. You know, we are the arbiter of this whole thing. So you've got to ask, you know, what does good look like?
Yep,
so
yep.
Where are there good relationships between airports and airlines? And you can pick a few examples, you know, where airlines and airports have worked, you know, very, very well cooperatively and collaboratively. That probably extends also to local government or to national government, because ministries generally, you know, outside of Europe, most airports are either city owned, as in the US case, or privately. City owned as in the US case, or state owned in most cases across in Africa, Australia, etc. And therefore, you know, there is a sort of a symbiotic relationship that one would assume exists between all those parties, but it doesn't. They're all after their own thing, their own priorities. You know, commercial landlords want to fill their pockets with cash. You know, airlines generally want to get their own way at the airport and get that stand and that bit of infrastructure and that terminal and that parking slot and this slot, and they don't get it, and then they get upset, and then they hold the airport accountable. But slot manager is independent of the airport operator anyway. Yeah, but we don't get to the airport. And the ground handler goes, all I want is to make a little bit more than a 5% margin. Can you just help me do that? That's all they're after. And of course, they get caught in this power struggle. So where those have worked really well, I think people should start to build and look within your own organisation. You know, for airport, you think you work well with the airline, so the airlines work well with the airport, and the ground handlers on board. You know, and don't look at people. You know, historically, you know, people have said, "Oh, ground handlers at the bottom of the food chain." Well, that's not really an appropriate thing to view them as, nor is it a polite thing to say. Actually, without ground handlers, your business ain't going anywhere, pal. So treat them with a bit more respect and care. They only want to be nurtured and looked after in the same way that the airline wants to recover. So now that we're all on the park and we're kicking that ball in the back of the same set of goalposts, rather than, you know, opposing teams, I think it's time for us to start to work. You know, identify what the shared goal is, and work towards creating momentum to deliver that. Surely the shared goal is as simple as, you know, restoration of passenger confidence. Let's get some footfall through the airport, and let's get some bums back on seats. Let's also make sure that we don't do it below cost, that we get the right price to deliver margin, that we look after our people in the same way as you'd want your people to be looked after. I've had airport CEOs in the Middle East say, "Oh, well, they're a contractor, so we just turn it off and switch it on and switch it off."
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Unacceptable for that to be sort of said. Just going to name check that I want. That's not fair. But let's get the goal in the back of the net. We all want to see some positives. Sit on the table, start engaging. If you can't do it in person, do it remotely. But at least get a shared set of goals and some shared initiatives. And don't be afraid. The airport shouldn't be afraid to ask the ground handlers for support, because they've got a lot more, you know, boots on the ground experience. The airline shouldn't be afraid to ask the airport, "Hey guys, look, we're struggling in this here. Can you kind of take the lead on?" You know, if it means divesting some control of your normal operation to the airport, to the ground handler, or to the specialist, then just bloody well do it and suck it up and get on with it. We all want to see the industry recovered. So that's my view, Chris.
No, that is very good, and just to cover it under one banner. So it's, you know, and you mentioned getting to good. So let's get to good before we reach for great, and let's do it all together. And we've got to do that. And again, from crisis to care. Stephen, we're almost at the end again. Okay, so thank you so much. And just to end, the last positive, everybody is still spending. So UPS said that their figures were up 21%, and the old e-commerce engine is roaring and roaring. It's in sport mode. So, you know, people are still spending in that area, but we need to be spending all over, and especially locally. Now, to finish again, so I think that the points that we want to put across is that now more than ever is the impetus for improvement. Okay, and everybody has to respect the realities. They can't twist things and do their own thing. We have to prepare people, and we have to prepare people correctly and in advance. Even if it's that they're getting regular messages, or they can access, just like we do when we're preparing a barbecue, we want to know what the weather's going to be like. People need to see indicators and know what will happen if those indicators start to go in the wrong direction. Practical sizing is with us. It's going to be with us for a long time. And the planned positives are so important. And again, just to finish, it's from crisis to cargo care in this instance, or any business care. And Boris, my friend, I would like you to put the banner up, which is chase it, clean it, kill it. And we've got to aggressively go after it, because if we don't, we're always going to be on the back foot. Stephen, what would you like? Any domestic tip, or keep cables away from young puppies, or?
Yeah, no domestic tip this week, I'm afraid, Chris. I had another family barbecue yesterday. So you're aware, last week I had a family barbecue for my sister-in-law that we hosted. I've been in trouble for that, but my wife was very much involved in the process. And yesterday we had a party for my son's 3rd birthday. So my domestic tip is, make sure you clean up the night before and not leave it until the next morning, because the next morning the head might be a little bit fuzzy, even at a 3-year-old's party.
Very good, eh? Wise as always. Steve, listen, it's always a pleasure. And thanks. all of the points and the candid and direct responses are greatly appreciated, and lots of people are commenting on it, so fair play to you. And we're going to have to put a couple of our initiatives into play and let people know what we've actually done to help and show that we care as well. So thank you. See you again next week, please God. Look after yourself, and you can, for Kath's and Kath alone, please feel free to put a little bit of a livelier shirt on next week.
I thought my Gleneagles, it was a rare win for the European Ryder Cup team in 2014. I thought I'd fly the flag.
Yeah, you know, fair play. All right, my friend, take care of yourself. God bless you. Cheers. Bye.